Hi, I'm Avery Davidson.
And I'm Kristen Oaks-White. Thank you for joining us for This Week in Louisiana Agriculture, the only TV show bringing Louisiana farmers and consumers together each week.
This past week was Tuesday everywhere else in the world, but here in Louisiana, we knew it as Fat Tuesday or Mardi Gras.
For many in the Christian faith, this period between now and Easter is known as Lent, a time of giving up some of the excess we see at Mardi Gras and for some personal reflection. As TWILA's Neil Melanson tells us, while Lent is known for fasting, it's also known in Louisiana for some of its food.
It's Lenten time here at St. Joseph's Catholic Church in Rain. It's a time spent in preparation for Easter when the resurrection of Jesus renews the faithful here. Here at St. Joe's, like many places across South Louisiana, it's a time known for both spiritual reflection and partaking in special Lent food practices.
Traditionally, Catholics kind of renew their desire for conversion through three traditional practices of fasting, almsgiving, and special prayers.
Now, you might think that giving up meat for Lent has to do with fasting or abstaining from meat, but Fontana says one big reason actually has to do with being able to give more.
Red meat particularly, but meat in general, is a rich food, right? It's expensive, and so one of the ideas is that I'm gonna eat poorer foods so I have more money, for instance, for almsgiving.
With both fasting and giving back, it has a variety of meanings here, which has led to a unique cultural blend for our state that can seem much more like a feast than a fast.
The church has different cultures. It embraces all cultures around the world. So, for instance, here in Louisiana, one of the big things is, our seafood is so abundant, right? So, like, for instance, I got friends in Kansas, and when Lent comes around, man, it's rough, because all they have is like canned tuna fish.
The variety of Lent foods that people eat has spread beyond the bounds of the church. Here at Tony's Seafood in Baton Rouge, this time of year is a big boon for their business.
It doesn't get any fresher than this. They go to eating saltwater fish or either catfish, which is the biggest sellers. The most consistent is we have it out through the whole Lenten time.
Another big seller is, of course, Louisiana crawfish.
Crawfish, fresh crawfish tails. Fridays is an unusually busy day because of the Lenten season. I'm not eating the meat on Friday.
It's also a big boon for farmers. Here at the Zonbrecker Farm, which sells to places like Tony's, they see a big bump that keeps their farms afloat, according to crawfish farmer and St. Joe parishioner Elizabeth Zonbrecker.
There's a definite pickup. This is probably one of the best times for the crawfish sales, especially this year, when it's been fluctuating kind of like the economy.
In fact, it's hard not to think about Lent without thinking about eating crawfish as some kind of long-standing religious tradition in Louisiana, but ironically, it's only been a recent trend.
Crawfish industry has changed so much in the last 10, 20, 30 years. When I was a kid, the idea of going to a restaurant and ordering boiled crawfish was like so foreign. My grandparents, going back even further, the fact that you would eat boiled crawfish at all, right, they thought was very strange.
And perhaps just as strangely, it's a practice of deprivation that some even look forward to, whether it's because of Lenten food favorites or because it provides a different form of sustenance.
As in the daily masses, they give us a lot to reflect on. Father gives you a lot of food to chew on.
As you heard, there are just so many traditions that make up the food culture down here. That, combined with this religious practice, it's created a culture of its own, and many people who don't practice Lent do participate in at least the cuisine portion of it. As we saw, that usually means eating a lot of seafood. And speaking of all that seafood, I did talk to Bill Pizzolatto about crawfish prices. From the last time we talked to him, prices have dropped $1.10 and are already getting ready to drop a lot more at a time when they're already lower than they were this time last year.
Crawfish is really starting to perk up because you got all this warm weather, the 75, 80 degree days, and a little cooler at night. But we've seen for the last couple months an unusually supply of crawfish. The quality has been there. The price is 75 cents a dollar a pound. Less expensive this time last year than it is now. I mean, less expensive this year than it was last year. And going forward, in the next couple months, when you see the Chafla Basin come in and produce, and it's going to give us an unusual supply of crawfish. Hopefully it continues throughout the crawfish season.
When that wild-caught crawfish does start to come in heavily, it's going to start competing with the farm-raised crawfish. That is when we could start to see crawfish prices going down below $1 per pound, in case you were wondering. Guys, you know, back to all that Lent story here, all of that crawfish is just symbolic of the abundance we have here in Louisiana, which I think really shapes those practices. You know, Lent, of course, is not a festival. It's not a celebration. It just may seem like it because we have this diversity of abundance here that people can partake in.
And I think we also have that joie de vivre, you know, where we love life and we love getting together with one another. And I remember New Iberia, we would have crawfish boils almost every weekend during Lent, crab, crawfish, or shrimp boils. Anything special you would do growing up in New Orleans?
Well, I want to be clear here. I'm not Catholic, so, you know, we didn't ever participate in Lent, but we participate in the food. Boiled crabs are my favorite food in the world, so, you know, we always have that, and I just thought it was just part of the tapestry, and so investigating the story, I think, brings that extra dimension to it.
Shows exactly where it came from. Thank you very much, Neil Melanson.
Now, while I do love seafood, I'm already missing the fun during Mardi Gras.
Well, New Orleans always gets the national spotlight when it comes to Mardi Gras celebrations, but in rural Louisiana, celebrations are much more family-friendly. That's especially true for New Roads, a town in Pointe-Coupee Parish surrounded by sugarcane fields. The horns, the drums, the march, left, right, left, the beads. All of the ingredients for a festive Mardi Gras. And in New Roads, the Mardi Gras celebration is family friendly.
The atmosphere, just being together and peaceful and quiet. I mean, not quiet, but it's enjoyable.
So enjoyable that I brought my two boys, Luke and Logan. Daddy's working, Logan. I'll get back to them in a bit. And with this crowd, I can trust that they'll be okay. Mayor Robert Meyer says it's the people here who create that family-friendly environment.
It truly is the New Roads community, the Pointe-Coupee Parish people coming out, our city people, our farmers, the kids. It's a great family event for this area. But then it's regional. It becomes a regional event.
And what you see in the parade, you'll see in the region as well. This green John Deere tractor did not have to travel far to pull this float.
We're an agricultural community, and those folks are part of the very fabric of both the morning parade, which is the Carnival Club crew, and the afternoon parade, which is the Lions Club crew. The farmers are part of that group. 2 years ago, we had one of the large farmers that was the Mardi Gras king.
Monday, up at Old River.
Louis Hebert is one of the hosts for the broadcast of the New Roads Mardi Gras Parade. He knows the value of agriculture when it comes to this event.
It's our largest industry in Pointe-Coupee, and also you could even use your imagination and say that the sugar and the cotton candy being sold on the streets may have been grown here in Pointe-Coupee Parish. The beef and the hamburgers was grown here in Pointe-Coupee. So it's all agriculture kind of fuels the entire economy and the entire festivities here.
Speaking of sugar, what does Luke want to fuel up on?
Cotton candy.
Why am I not surprised? After a few beads and a Hershey's bar, I'm able to fulfill that request. What do you think of the cotton candy?
Good.
What does it taste like?
I don't know.
Maybe we need a second opinion. This right here is Logan's first taste of cotton candy. I'm sure it will not be his last. This marked the 95th year for the New Roads Community Center Carnival Parade. Steve Zhug was the king and Sarah Leatherwood reigned as queen. The unseasonably warm weather brought out a record crowd for this year's celebration in New Roads. And you would think that Luke and Logan, who you saw in the piece, would just absolutely love the parade, catching the beats and everything. I asked Luke what his favorite parts of the day were.
What were they?
He loved the floating dock on False River, sitting there, and finding a roly-poly in a potted plant.
They say that children enjoy the simple things in life, and you know what? Neither one of those cost you a dime.
Oh no, it cost me, I think, let's see, it was $15 after I had the corn dogs and the cotton candy. So, but that's all right, worth every penny.
Well, it looked like they had a great time. Well, it's also another special time of the year right now, the legislative one. The special session is behind us, and Louisiana lawmakers were successful in closing the budget deficit.
This week, Carl Wiggers tells us what it took to do that and how it's going to affect you moving forward.
The view outside of the Capitol this week is quiet, but during last week's special session, it was quite a different scene. However, Louisiana's legislators did come together and make the changes necessary to get the state through the end of this fiscal year.
We applied $205 million worth of cuts. A lot of them were with the Department of Health and Hospitals. We also dipped into the rainy day fund, which if this is not a rainy day, I don't know what is. So $99 million of that is going to be used. That resolves us $304 million deficit that we have that's due June 30th.
Of that $205 million in cuts, more than $130 million were cut from the budget of the Louisiana Department of Health. LDH Chief of Staff Andrew Tizzolo says that these cuts over this short period of time are much worse than they seem.
So we're talking about basically April 1 to the end of June. It's not a lot of time. So no matter how big or small the numbers were, we were going to take this significant cut because we just didn't have a lot of time to effectuate things. So one of the major things that I think will end up being impacted by these cuts are our local governing entities. That's our districts all throughout the state that provide, up until the Medicaid expansion, really provided most of the behavioral health care for indigent and for low-income folks in a lot of communities throughout rural and urban throughout the state.
Next to the LDH, the Louisiana Department of Ag and Forestry's $1.27 million cut appears to be a win. But as Commissioner Mike Strain explains, HCR 1 may open the door to deeper cuts to vital services.
There is a resolution passed by the House and the Senate to take monies from the self-generated, dedicated funds and use that to pay towards state debt. Those monies are dedicated funds for the operation of specific programs, and the farmers that pay these funds pay all other taxes in addition to these funds.
In Baton Rouge, I'm Carl Wiggers for This Week in Louisiana Agriculture.
Again, the general public should not feel these changes at the Department of Health. For more about the special session, the cuts that were made, or the upcoming regular legislative session, you can visit our website at twilatv.org. Speaking of legislative work in Washington, D.C. resumes now that members of Congress are back from visiting their districts. You likely heard about rowdy crowds at some of the town hall meetings here in Louisiana. For Louisiana's 6th District Congressman, Garrett Graves of Baton Rouge, it's a time for him to learn about the issues in which he's not an expert.
Much of the 6th District is urban and suburban, surrounding the state capital. Despite being somewhat removed from the large farms and ranches in other parts of the state, Congressman Graves says it's important for his constituents to pay attention to agricultural issues.
This is one of the top foodie parts of the country. People love their food here. People plan their days around where they're going to have their meals, what restaurants they're going to go to, what they're going to eat. Number two, we do have a good bit of agriculture right here in this area, whether it's sugarcane, soybean. We have the peripheral of rice and corn and other things going on here. And so it is an important part of our economy. It's an important part of our culture. And so I think it's vital that we continue paying attention to that.
Congressman Graves says he's looking forward to working with other members of the Louisiana delegation to ensure that our state is well represented in the next Farm Bill. In other news from Capitol Hill, the Environmental Protection Agency's Waters of the United States rule is the target of a recent executive order signed by President Donald Trump. Why should you care? Well, not only could the rule affect what farmers and ranchers must do before they work in their fields, it could change what you do in your own yard.
Trump's executive order does not rescind the rule, but it directs the EPA and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to reconsider the waterways affected. Previous interpretations of the rule would give the EPA the same regulatory control over drainage ditches as it does navigable waterways. Louisiana's 5th District Congressman Dr. Ralph Abraham says this is a step in the right direction.
The WOTUS regulation as it is written now could directly affect that ditch in front of the yard, that little pond they may have in the backyard to fish in. Things like that. The interpretation of the WOTUS regulation that I've been given, it does affect that. So those people hopefully also can take a sigh of relief, a step back, and say, okay, this is one less thing that I have to worry about in my life.
The new head of the EPA, Scott Pruitt, had previously filed suit against the EPA about WOTUS when he was the Oklahoma Attorney General. Still to come on TWILA, keeping the grocery store shelves stocked with rice is more difficult than you might think.
Plus, my husband is in deep, deep trouble.
Again?
I'll tell you why coming up.
Again? Quick action by the Louisiana Department of Agriculture and Forestry may avoid a potential rice shortfall on grocery store shelves this fall. Rice seed germination rates have fallen at least 30% below normal averages. As TWILA's AJ Sabine shows us, LSU Ag Center rice researchers have possible solutions to the low germination issue.
LSU rice scientists Don Groth and Dustin Harrell discussed the impact of low germination rates in rice seed. Why is that a problem? LSU Ag Center rice pathologist Don Groth explains.
These fungi are attacking the seeds, and they either try to get the carbohydrate from the endosperm that the seed's going to use to germinate, so it would steal the food from the plant, or it's actually attacking the germ point, the actual little plant that's growing from these seeds, and attacking and using it as a food source. Either way, it effectively stops the seed from being able to germinate.
The discovery by the Louisiana Department of Agriculture of low germination rates in seed rice has forced it to issue an emergency rule which lowers minimum germination standards to 60% for 120 days. This rule will likely prevent crop losses due to failed stands of rice. LSU rice specialist Dustin Harrell explains how we got here.
Last year, as you know, we had a lot of poor growing conditions here in the state of Louisiana.
Harrell has identified several solutions to the low germ issue for rice growers as the window for planting this year's crop approaches.
First, talk to their seed dealers so that they know the germination percentage of the seed that they're going to plant. And based on that germination percentage, they're going to adjust their seeding rates. That way they have the same stand that they typically have. And one of the other things that they're going to have to consider is a lot of times, if we're going to have low germ seed, it's also going to have low seedling vigor. So those two kind of go hand in hand. So another thing that we have to think of is if you have the choice between planting good germ seed and the low germ seed, you want to plant the good germ seed earlier in the season when the soils are cooler.
According to Dr. Harrell, the low germ seed is not variety specific. In Crowley, I'm AJ Sabine for This Week in Louisiana Agriculture.
According to an LDAF press release, the rice industry in Louisiana contributes more than $500 million to the Louisiana economy through the sale of rice. Without a temporary suspension of current minimum certified seed germination standards, a substantial portion of that contribution will be lost. For more information about low germination rates in rice seed, you can log on to our website at twilatv.org.
Farming remains one of the most top 5 dangerous jobs in America. Late last year, a 37-year-old man in Madison Parish died in a grain bin accident. Now, first responders and farmers are learning to prevent the next accident as part of Grain Bin Safety Week.
That's why the Louisiana and Mississippi Farm Bureaus teamed up to train hundreds of Louisiana farmers, industry workers, and first responders on grain bin entrapment and how to properly rescue someone when they're faced with that scenario. At this workshop, first responders get hands-on experience with the tools necessary for a successful rescue to happen. Mississippi Farm Bureau Safety Specialist Benton Mosley helped lead the demonstration. He explains that these workshops could be the difference between life and death.
We're realizing that farmers and firemen are not prepared if an accident was to happen, and unfortunately, if these accidents happen, a lot of times this is pretty fatal. A lot of fire departments aren't ready if the situation happens. They don't have the necessary supplies and possibly manpower.
We've got more on this story coming up in our Trending on TWILA segment. In the meantime, this week is Agriculture Safety Awareness Program Week, or ASAP for short, and grain bin safety is certainly a part of that.
But what if we could prevent accidents entirely? That's why this year's ASAP theme is Get Out of My Space, and it's all about creating a safety zone around your work area for accident prevention. Each day will have a different goal, and you can find out how you can avoid all kinds of accidents for you and your family. For more information about grain bin safety or ASAP, visit our website at twilatv.org. And I'll have more about this after the break.
Well, still to come on TWILA, it's the Miss Universe of Brahman cattle, and the winner is right here in Louisiana.
Plus, we'll take a look at everyone's reaction to the shift in tides on WOTUS. Trending on TWILA is up next. Stay with us. Okay, Avery, I've got a little trivia question for you. What do Donald Trump, a world champion cow, and a husband trapped in corn all have in common.
Okay, I'm going to say that they were all seen by millions of viewers. It was huge, a huge audience saw them all.
Then you would be correct because they are all trending on social media this week.
President Donald Trump delivered his first joint congressional address last week where he reached across party lines and encouraged unity as he detailed his agenda for the next 4 years.
But it was an executive order that had the ag community celebrating. As we reported earlier, President Trump issued an executive order to overturn the controversial Waters of the U.S. rule.
American Farm Bureau President Zippy Duvall met with the president on Tuesday and thanked him for supporting a common sense approach to regulatory reform. Duvall said, "This is a win for farmers and ranchers and farm bureaus across the country. No one knows what's better for the land than the men and women who live on it and take care of it."
Ag groups from across the country also echoed their support of Trump's executive order on social media.
One cattleman in Acadia Parish has another reason to celebrate after his Brahman cow was named the 2017 Miss World winner. That's essentially the cattle version of winning the Miss Universe pageant, and I don't believe there is a swimsuit competition for this one.
No. Lady Pasco Rhino is her name, and she was Louisiana born and raised in Acadia Parish by cattleman Troy Thibodeau. Area cattlemen will honor Thibodeau and his Lady Rhino's success during the 32nd annual Here's the Beef Cook-Off in St. Landry Parish.
Now we're closing out this week's trending segment with our third topic, husbands trapped in corn. Kristen, you're going to have to explain this one to me.
I will. Well, next time, I bet he'll unload the dishwasher when I tell him to. Just kidding. Well, as we told you in last week's show, my husband Landon would be our guinea pig against his will for the Louisiana Farm Bureau grain bin safety course. But we had no idea that the live broadcast would go viral on Facebook.
The live video of Landon's grain bin rescue currently has more than 137,000 views and nearly 2,000 shares on Facebook. That number's going up as I speak, so it could be even higher than that. A lot of grain elevators and fire departments have shared the video on their pages, and it really is a great tool to help others know what to do if you find yourself or someone you know in that type of situation. We want to send a special thank you to the Mississippi Farm Bureau Federation for helping our Louisiana Farm Bureau host these workshops, and also thanks to Landon for jumping in like I did, like Carrie Martin did, to help us with the rescue demonstration and actually show folks what it takes to get someone out of grain, out of flowing grain.
He was a little hesitant, so I had to give him a little push to do it.
Did you literally push him?
I wish I could have. No, but I didn't. A lot of people were concerned on the Facebook video. They made comments about we should not have used a live human being in the demonstration, but you yourself have done this, and you know that it is the safest possible situation that you could be in.
Yeah, it's not a deep pile of corn. It's only, I think, 6 feet deep at most. It's only 20 bushels, so it's not like there's a whole lot there that anyone would have to scoop up. Plus, they have special safety releases on the sides. So they pop open and all the corn would just flow out. Plus, there's no auger at the bottom. So there's nothing mechanized that can actually turn. It is absolutely safe. Oh, and forgot about the harness.
Right.
So if all of that should fail, they can winch you out of there. There are so many ways that you can come out. The only question I had is, does Landon still count as a live human being? Sorry, couldn't pass that one up. Love you, Landon.
Oh, that's funny. But you know, if you were going to be in that situation, trust me, that would be the scenario that you would want to be in.
It's designed to be safe.
Exactly. So moving on to this week's trending trivia. Last week we asked you about how many FFA jackets are manufactured each year, and the correct answer is 50,000. Since this week is National Grain Bin Safety Week, we have a trivia question related to that. About how much grain does the average 10-inch auger unload per hour? Is it A, 400 bushels, B, 4,000 bushels, or C, 40,000 bushels? To enter this week's trending trivia contest, simply log on to your Facebook or Twitter account and post your answer with the hashtag TWILA Trivia. Or you can always submit your answer on our website at twilatv.org.
Well, that about does it for this week's This Week in Louisiana Agriculture. Please join us again next week when we'll get a close-up look at Lady Rhino. It might be a face only a mother could love, but it's bringing a lot of attention to Louisiana and some investors from Thailand. And also, you'll probably be out of the doghouse by then.
Right. I can't wait. For all of us here at TWILA, thank you for joining us. We hope to see you again right here next week.